you give me $30,000 and I'll build an empire. Well, as it happened, my father passed away and left me $30,000. And that was the money I needed to get into the ad business. And we built 800 Dentists based on family money. I discovered boldness as a life skill because I was an introvert, and it was really preventing me from succeeding in life and succeeding in relationships, succeeding everywhere. I was just stacking regrets because I was always hesitating. Being bold is taking action when you don't know how it's going to go. It's not that you're confident, because people say, oh, I would be bolder if I were more confident. And it's like, that's not how it works. Don't raise so much money that that's how you solve all your problems is with cash. Because there's two things that'll take you down: not enough money and too much money. Because if you've got enough money to throw at every problem, you don't actually solve the problems. If you don't have money, you have to throw your brains at it.
Welcome back to the Hustle and Grind podcast, the show where we dig into why real entrepreneurs trade comfort for conviction. This isn't about vanity metrics or overnight success. It's about the stories behind building a reputation that actually matters. I'm your host, Andrew, keynote architect, platform builder, and fellow founder in the trenches. Today, I'm sitting down with Fred Joyal, the co-founder of 1-800-Dentist. Fred took one of the toughest industries, dental care, and co-founded the most successful referral service in the country, 1-800-Dentist. While he was CEO, that service generated over $1 billion in aggregated revenue. He's channeled that scaling expertise into his work as an international keynote speaker and best-selling author. His latest book, Super Bold: From Underconfident to Charismatic in 90 Days, is a Wall Street Journal and Amazon bestseller. Beyond the business world, Fred has been a Jeopardy question and once beat Sir Richard Branson in chess. He now advises companies on everything from growth to strategy to fundraising. We're digging into the bold moves that generated a billion-dollar reputation. So, Fred, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. I am really looking forward to chatting with you today because you've built some bigger brands, probably one that most of us have heard of, 1-800-Dentist. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing some of your stories today. Thank you for being on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Andrew, I'm really looking forward to it too. I love talking about business journeys because the twists and turns. People see a lot from the outside, but they are the stuff that happens under the hood, so to speak, is quite different usually.
Exactly. And let's actually get into that because I love to, again, most people have probably heard of 1-800-Dentist. It's a really big brand. A lot of times we don't hear about what happened to build that brand or the story that happened to get to that point. So can you let's start here. How did you start 1-800-Dentist? What was the impetus? What was that one moment behind it going, I'm going to go create a 1-800 number just around dentists? Like how did that come to fruition?
So often things are, have a randomness to it. A friend of mine had that 800 number. That he had registered, and it was ringing to his house. Now he got them he got a few of them when they first came out, but he was not an ambitious person and not a hard worker. I had actually worked in a startup with him, and it was like a reverse MBA. He did everything wrong, which was very instructive but not lucrative.
Yeah,
but he had this moment of brilliance and got this phone number. So I went off, and my real career was as a copywriter in an ad agency, a big LA ad agency. And I loved working in advertising, but the career arc is fatal. I mean, it swoops up in income till you're 50, then they lay you off and you can't get a job. So I was watching this happen. I said, I don't want this to happen. Plus, and this, like many entrepreneurs, not a good employee. And so I really kind of needed my own business to be happy. And so I just started this and I was naive enough to think I could pull it off. I didn't know anything about dentistry, and I had never really run a business before, especially one of this magnitude. And so a good friend of mine wanted to quit his job as a stockbroker, and we just started it. And it was not even remotely easy because dentists mostly didn't advertise. It was considered unprofessional. So we actually, the American Dental Association spent 2 years trying to outlaw state by state dentist referral services. That's how bad it was. Because dentists were complaining, saying, why are you letting 800 dentists do this? And why don't you promote dentistry? And of course, the ADA doesn't have the money to promote dentistry like we did because doctors were paying us. They were paying us $1,000 a month in 1986 to be part of this. And so we eventually had to bring the Federal Trade Commission down on the ADA and bitch slap them to stop trying to outlaw this stuff state by state. We were just chasing them around the country. But that was the kind of headwinds we were facing. And you either give up because the foot stomping on you is too big, or you step up. And I'm a step up guy, so.
Well, I love that story because, first of all, that's surprising to me. Like, why wouldn't you want to build your company? And for me, when I see stuff like that, it's more that, what is the fear behind this? Like, is it professional to advertise? Yeah, it is. This is how we stay in business. I get, I understand where they're coming from. I don't agree with it, but it was really interesting their reaction. But the other side is sometimes you have to push. And I think that's something that us as entrepreneurs are really good at, is saying, no, I reject your reality. The reality in that case was the ADA saying, we think it's unprofessional. We're going to try to stop you. And I substitute my own. And that is dentists being able to come in and pay for these referral services. And so, I think that was really interesting. Do you, now, as far as how far did it get with the FTC? Was it more just they said, hey, stop it? Or did it go to litigate? I'm just curious now.
We hired a lobbyist. He went to the FTC and explained what was going on, and they just said, that's restraint of trade. And they just wrote the ADA a letter and said, stop it now, or there will be penalties. Okay. It was over.
Yeah, and it makes sense, because it is. Yeah. It's,
It's restraint of trade. Yeah.
So now building this company, what sort of, because we always hear about the good, like you said, but we don't hear about the bad. I think we talked about this before we started on the show today. What were, besides the initials getting involved with a fight, the ADA, what other issues did you have as far as scaling? Like, what were some of the problems, especially in 87, when we didn't have the tech that we do now to be able to do an 800 number and that sort of a thing?
2 floppies, man, with the data on one and the program on the other. That was our first computer.
I love that.
Yeah. And so the first thing that happened that was, not quite an extinction event, but, we probably had 4 near extinction events over the course of the 28 years I ran it. We had created territories for the dentists based on their zip codes. And what was happening is one dentist would get 50 patients in a month and another guy would get 7. And we had run out of territory. We started in Los Angeles. We had given away way too much real estate to get guys to join because we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know how many patients were going to call. Once we had that data about 2 years in, we said the only way we're going to expand this business to a profitable size and also to satisfy consumers, because they would say, you don't have a dentist like 2 miles from me? Like in 2 miles in LA is 20 in Nebraska. And so we said that we got together with our doctors and said, we're going to have to change the contract. It is no longer a territory-based model. It is an average number of patients per month model. We had 100 doctors paying us at that point. 98 of them signed the new contract. 2 of them sued us. 1 of them settled very quickly. And then the other one, his lawyer went all out. His lawyer was saying stuff like, I'm going to own your business by the time this is over. And this was our first, the business lesson I teach people the most when I talk to young entrepreneurs is there's nothing more expensive than a cheap lawyer. If you try to save money on attorneys, it will cost you dearly. And so we were really fighting this thing tooth and nail, and it was really becoming challenging. And then we switched attorneys, and it settled in 3 days. Because this guy, in the first deposition, he straightened out the other lawyer. I was like, this is amazing what he did. And they just folded. They realized it was no longer, wasn't a fair fight before, and now it flipped and wasn't a fair fight. And and we were fine. We settled it reasonably. And actually many years later, the dentist was like, I hope you're not mad at me. It's like, I said, I make 5 times what you make. I'm okay. But that's the kind of stuff that happens. And if you can't figure out a way through, it's game over. We weren't even profitable at that point yet. And here we are racking up $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 in legal fees with a guy who's never going to stop. I mean, he deposed me for 2 days straight, to the point where he taught me how to be deposed, and I started taking control of the depositions, because somebody can't do that to you for that long without you starting to understand the game. I started correcting his grammar.
There's a poke at the ego. I love that. Yeah, and I've been in a situation too where we were, I was working with a company. It was we did not want to run into regulatory issues, and it was kind of a gray area. So we had a lawyer at $1,000 an hour, and it saved us a huge amount in the past, in the future. But it was well worth it. And I like that you said that so there are some team members that you don't want to scrimp on, and I think one of those is a lawyer and one of those is an accountant, because a good accountant, not a tax preparer, they're very different roles. A good accountant, is worth a few $1,000s that you use to.
Yeah, if your accountant's car is 10 years old, you need a new accountant.
Yeah, yeah, and they can help, with interesting, there's rules out there like Augusta rule, and there's things that we don't hear about usually that really help us to be able to get, it's a rigged system. I'm going to use the person who knows exactly how it's rigged. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like a tax attorney. There's stuff that 98% of the population doesn't understand about the tax code, because it's unbelievably complex.
16,000 pages. It's over that right now, just for businesses. 16,000 pages of tax code. Yeah. But hey, so from scaling this company, though, because you took this company to a valuation over $1 billion.
Well, all right. So let me clarify that.
Please do.
Peaked out at just short of $50 million a year in revenue. In aggregate, we generated, if you added up all the money we made, we generated like $1.2 billion in revenue. And actually the sale of it, we sold it deeply in decline. Google kind of ate the business model. So the sale, the multiple stages of the sale went as badly as it could possibly go. Which is, sometimes it does, even when you have a tremendous run. 28 years is an unbelievable run for a business. And we just, a couple of, private equity decisions that just, as they often do, were painfully ill-advised.
And I don't think you're alone on that. I've got a friend that specializes in exits, and he says that's a lot of what happens. It's just they're not valuing companies. I think half art, half science, half guessing. There's a lot more into it than a lot of people think, and there's a lot of ways to do it. And so I think it's not hard to run into issues with that. Yeah.
And they brought in a CEO. They made me stay for 3 years. They brought in a CEO who obliterated the culture in 90 days. Yeah. And we lived and died by how good our culture was. And then he got in litigation with this little SaaS company that we bought that I knew was going to blow up. And he gets in a fight with them, fires the entire team, goes into litigation, and loses completely and utterly in the litigation. Meanwhile, we don't grow the company. All the competitors step up because they're saying, oh my God, here comes 800 dentists. They've already got 3, 4, 5,000. They don't know how many clients we have. They think we might have 10,000 clients. We're going to roll all over them. We forfeit the match. That business alone would have been worth, well, the nearest competitor we have, which grew really well, sold for $440 million years later. Demand force.
Yeah.
And it was worthless. He trashed it to the point where we could, and then he walked after he laid the company to waste. And I had to watch from the caboose, the whole train wreck.
Yeah. And I think that's what happens when you get these private equity companies coming in. They're looking 100% at the bottom dollar, and that's it. And you have it creates its own issues in and of itself. They think, oh, yeah, I could take this brand and I'm going to use this brand name and go out there and do all this stuff. And they're buying the brand.
They hired a plump and dumper CEO, and he played 2 or 3 of his tricks, and they didn't work. And he got took umbrage with what this little company did, and decided he was going to sue them and not have to pay the balance of what we owed. Not only did we have to pay the balance of the purchase, the arbitrator accelerated the payments and vaporized all of our spare cash. We had to pay $2 million like that day, along with their legal fees, of course.
Of course, which were probably huge at this point. Yeah. So have you... I love to ask this question. Have you always been entrepreneurial? Has this been something like that you've kind of known you were going to go into business for yourself? We already mentioned that we're terrible employees because we're entrepreneurs. But have you? Was this something that you always had in the back of your mind? Like, where did that start?
I didn't. What I really knew is that I wanted to write for a living.
Okay.
I wasn't very ambitious in my 20s. And then when I discovered advertising, I thought, I could do this as a career. I could be happy showing up at this place every day. And I moved quickly through the advertising world because I had done maybe 40 different jobs from 18 to 30. I'd worked in all different companies. So I understood how businesses worked from that standpoint. Not that I was running them, but I was working in them. So when I was talking to the clients in the ad agency, I understood what they needed. They needed the advertising to work, to make them money. That didn't need to be clever, funny, creative. It needed to work. But I got really good at presenting the creative to them, to the point where they'd drag me into these meetings, and that, these would be big companies, and they would say, Fred's going to present, just because I loved it. And then I realized I had to have my own business. So I really came at entrepreneurial life, and discovered that part of my DNA later. And of course, it's never going away.
Exactly. I love asking that question because I think we all sort of have it in the back of our head that and we may not have the words for it. We may not be able to visualize how it's going to work out, but we all kind of have this thing where it's like that moment when things change, that we're going to get something different. It
reminds me of something, because in my 20s, when I was just knocking around, just learning, trying everything, and an ex-girlfriend of mine was berating me and saying, you're not ambitious. You're just goofing around doing stuff. When are you going to start focusing and stuff? And I very casually said to her, you give me $30,000 and I'll build an empire. Well, as it happened, my father passed away and left me $30,000. And that was the money I needed to get into the ad business. And we built 800 Dentists based on family money. It was around $30,000 that we built that entire business. We didn't bring on partners for 10 years in, something like that. We found a way to self-capitalize the whole way. But that was so when I tell that, I realized deep down there was an ambition, but there was nothing I was passionate about.
Yeah. But then you found it, and this is the one thing, and you stuck with it for almost 30 years. And yeah, I think sometimes it's those moments when it's like, you found this phone number and said, hey, I'm going to go do something with this. That's sometimes entrepreneurship isn't planning. Sometimes it's just jumping at the right moment, right?
And my partner and I said, wouldn't it be great if we could make $100,000 a year each? That would be awesome. And we laugh and go, wouldn't it be amazing to live on $100,000 a year?
Exactly. And this was $100,000 a year in the mid 80s, which was a very good salary. Like the average at that time was like 30. So yeah, it's good.
And I mean, once we started rolling, we went from making nothing to about 3 years in making, enough to pay our bills. Then the next year was 100. Then the next year was 300. Mm-hmm. And it just kept going from there. So it scaled. Yeah. Which we, you can only look, especially if you're a young entrepreneur, you can only look so far ahead. Now, young entrepreneurs think they're all going to sell for $1 billion. So I guess that's probably changed. Yeah, and it's also not true.
Yeah, no. To get to that valuation, I've had a couple of friends do that, and it is very different than what most people think it is. Yeah. So let's talk about writing for a little bit, because you have a book out, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about your book, Super Bold.
Yeah. So I discovered boldness as a life skill because I was an introvert, and it was really preventing me from succeeding in life and succeeding in relationships, succeeding everywhere. I was just stacking regrets because I was always hesitating and behaving in a shy or introverted way so often. And I fought my way out of it. And I realized how rewarding being bold was. And being bold is taking action when you don't know how it's going to go. It's not that you're confident, because people say, oh, I would be bolder if I were more confident. And it's like, that's not how it works. If you're confident, it doesn't require boldness. There's no risk in it. Boldness is being uncomfortable, not knowing how it's going to go, but saying, I'm going to try it anyway. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to give it everything I got. And I started to tell young people, it was actually a high school group of high school students, I said, boldness is a superpower. And the sooner you learn it, the sooner you stop worrying about what people think and don't be the one stopping yourself, the more amazing your life will be, and the sooner that'll happen. And they went, that's great. How? So I had to figure out how I did it. And that's what I ended up writing this book, which explains in detail how you build boldness just like a muscle. And it changes everything in your life. So yeah, and super boldness is you're just never the one who stops you. You're the person who says yes, who steps up, who speaks up, says, sure, why not? Mm-hmm. Instead of thinking about all the ways it could go wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. You use the same amount of effort with worry as you do with building something. You might as well use it for something that's worth it.
Yes. Yeah. It does not accrue. Worrying does not accrue to any value.
Nothing at all. Nope. And so the other thing I want to talk about quickly before we kind of get to the end here is you have a new course coming out in the end of January 2026. Tell me a little bit more about what that course is, the sales transformation course.
Yeah, because boldness for a salesperson impacts her income significantly. The difference between being 20% bolder when you are prospecting, when you are pitching, and the same thing is true for entrepreneurs. The bold entrepreneurs who can get up in front of a room and with passion and energy present what they believe is going to be their success makes all the difference. But it's about, the boldness to listen more than you talk. When you, as a salesperson, when you talk endlessly, that's nervous chatter. You're thinking, if I just bury them in enough information, they will buy, which is, any real salesperson knows that's completely and utterly wrong. They can't stop themselves, though. So it takes boldness to shut up, and it takes boldness to ask for the order and to ask for what you're worth in life. and to not be the one limiting yourself. And so I take salespeople who are at that mid-range. They're getting some traction, but they know they can be the top salesperson in that company, but they don't know what's holding them back. And it's because they haven't built their boldness in every area that they need it in sales. So I created a video course, the Super Bold Sales Transformation, which is going to launch at the end of January. And it will change their careers. And, it's for entrepreneurs too, but I'm really narrow focusing on salespeople because they're the ones, the return is there so quickly for them because it's in the next month. Half the time, I've talked to business owners and they said, I'll buy a bundle of those and just, make my salespeople have them sign up for them and take the course. Because it's the core issue, right? A lot of sales training is out there teaching you all these tactics and mechanics and stuff like that. But how do you get somebody to pick up the phone and just keep doing the cold calls or prospect, go to a networking meeting and meet half the people in the room? What does that take? Where does that come from? It doesn't come from loading their lips with the right words. You got to get deeper and build their boldness. So that's what it does.
I love that. And if you guys want to learn more about that, there will be links in the show notes to get either on the wait list or actually purchase it once it is released. And before we get going, I have one more question for you. What is one piece of advice, having built this company, what is one piece of advice that you would give people if they're trying to scale their company? What was one thing that went wrong that you want to share with people? It's one thing that you can share with folks who want to scale.
God, there's so many, but don't raise so much money that's how you solve all your problems is with cash. Because there's two things that'll take you down: not enough money and too much money. Because if you've got enough money to throw at every problem, you don't actually solve the problems. If you don't have money, you have to throw your brains at it and your team's brains and solve it. And what happens is you come up with a much more powerful and long-lasting solution. Money can often be the Band-Aid that masks the real solution, and you don't get to it, and you burn more cash, and then you run out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the wisdom today. Really appreciate it. It's been a whole lot of fun. I've gotten a lot out of the conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate you being here.
Andrew, my pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for tuning into the Hustle and Grind podcast, where we unpack what it really takes to build something that matters. If today's conversation hit home, do me a favor. Share it with someone who's in the trenches too. And if you're building your own brand, platform, or message and want help turning that story into serious authority, head over to theauthorityforge.com to see how we can help. Until next time, keep showing up, keep shipping, and keep chasing the work that sets you on fire. I'm Andrew, and this was the Hustle and Grind podcast.